Hmm? I do. Do you need it? This is mine.
Oh, thank you. I'll keep it there.
What?
Testing. Great. Okay. Take a deep breath. Oh, you can hear me. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Legislative District 16 Candidates Forum. My name is Barbara Preston. I'm editor of the Montgomery News and a proud sponsor of this event. The Montgomery News is one of the few remaining independent newspapers left in New Jersey. We're a monthly newspaper, and we mail 23,000 newspapers first class to all homes in Montgomery Township, Rocky Hill, and parts of Princeton, Hopewell, Hillsborough, and Franklin Township. One of our key goals is to provide fair and unbiased coverage of the news in our community. This includes equal coverage for candidates, each candidate running for office. We are delighted to partner with the League of Women Voters who share this vision. They did most of the legwork for this event and have strict rules in place to ensure that each candidate has equal time to answer each question. Also, the moderator is not even a resident of Legislative District 16. So she does not vote for any of these candidates, just to avoid the appearance of a conflict or a bias. We hope that this forum will help our visitors and our viewers to select the best candidates. And we thank each of the candidates on this stage for participating tonight, and I wish you each best of luck. We also thank Princeton Community Television for videotaping this event live, and we thank Raritan Valley Community College for hosting us here tonight.
I'm Sandy Matson. I happen to actually live in the 23rd Legislative District, and I'm the moderator for this forum. You've already heard the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, political nonprofit, and we work to empower voters and defend democracy, and we never support or oppose candidates for office or political parties. So with that sort of definition behind us, a few words about the format, and then we will start. I'll introduce the candidates in just a moment. Each candidate, I have some questions from you. I have questions that were submitted online, and each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to the question, and then 30 seconds for a rebuttal if they so choose. Our timekeeper is Madison Pitts, who is sitting right in the front. She has actually the hardest job here, I guess, after the candidates, because 90 seconds and 30 seconds comes mighty fast. And as I said to her, you really can't listen to the candidates. You got to be watching your clock all the time. The forum is being live streamed by Princeton TV, and the videotape will be rebroadcast later. So we hope to reach many more people than we have actually sitting here tonight. So the candidates for the 16th Legislative District, on my far right is Roy Fryman, Democrat. Next to him is Sadaf Jaffer, also a Democrat running for the 16th Legislative District. Next is Joseph Lukac, one Republican candidate, and Vincent Panico is the second candidate. So with that, the candidates drew for opening remarks, and Mr. Panico will go first, 90 seconds.
Thank you, Ms. Metzen. Good evening. I'm running for Assembly because LD16 needs someone in touch with Central Jersey. I'm born and raised in Central New Jersey. I earned my associate's right here at Raritan Valley, my bachelor's from Rider University, and my master's from Auburn University in Montgomery. In 2008, I started my first business in Central New Jersey. Since then, I have worked for small and medium businesses across the state, employing neighbors and friends. I bought my first house when I was 25 years old, and I've lived the struggle of being a young adult trying to plant roots in New Jersey. I see my friends who were in their 20s and low 30s still living at their parents' house because they can't afford to live in Roy Fryman's New Jersey. I'm running for the legislature because I've been able to make a difference on the school board. Over the past 9 years, I've served on local board of education, with the most recent 4 as board president. During that time, we've gone debt-free while expanding services, settled the teacher contract before it expired, and protected our staff and students through calculated measures to avoid any COVID outbreaks. I don't do it for personal interest. I don't have any kids in the district. I do it because I care. I care about New Jersey, I care about my neighbors, and I care about our future. Roy Fryman, though, he won't stand up for his neighbors. Over the last 4 years, Hillsborough School District, his hometown, has lost $6.4 million in state funding. He could have voted no, but instead, he hid under his desk like a coward and abstained. Roy won't fight for his own neighbors, so what makes you think he's going to fight for you?
Thank you. Mr. Fryman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And I also want to extend my thanks to the League of Women Voters, for Raritan Valley Community College for hosting this, and for those of you that are watching. I really applaud this opportunity to be here because it expands civil engagement, and getting more people involved is very, very important. It has been an honor to serve in the 16th District for the past 4 years. I've been working with my colleagues to make New Jersey more affordable and more accessible and a fairer place to live for everyone over those past 4 years. As we are recovering from COVID, I don't believe that getting back to where we were before is good enough. To me, that is the minimum standard. That is a baseline of where we need to build off of. That's why in Trenton, I have focused on getting millions of dollars of financial support for our small businesses, while at the same time easing their regulations so they can adjust and adapt to the pandemic. That is why I've secured funding for our schools so children will have the resources, including mental health services, so they can achieve their full potential. That is why I co-sponsored the legislation that struck down the Christie-era cuts for women's health care. And that is why I'm the author of the single largest debt reduction in state history. I thank you for your support, and I look forward to tonight's debate.
Thank you. Mr. Lukac.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this debate tonight, and for everybody coming out tonight, and also Raritan Valley College and the surrounding community. I was born and raised in Manville, New Jersey. I still live there with my wife and my 3 children. I come from a middle-class, hardworking family, and I know what working families go through on a day-to-day basis to keep a roof over their heads and provide the basic needs their families need. After graduating high school, I served proudly in the Army Combat Engineers for 12 years, honorably, and have been a union electrician with the IBEW Local 102 for the last 27 years. I served 1 term on the Manville School Board and am currently serving my 2nd term on the Manville Borough Council. Every one of us has witnessed Roy Fryman and his running mates rubber stamp the status quo wherever they've been and served, raising taxes on the middle class and driving working families and businesses out of New Jersey for far too long. The residents of New Jersey deserve better leadership. They deserve to be represented by efficient and effective problem solvers, not people who practice poor judgment and lack action. During the pandemic, we have all witnessed just how badly they have failed you, the ones who pay to keep the lights running. You're also paying for their mistakes. They have proven time and again through their repeated blunders that the last year and 9 months, they're not up to the task of dealing with the many needs our state has.
Time.
Thank you.
Continue to hold it up, just so they may not see it. Okay. Dr. Jaffer.
Good evening. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Montgomery News, Princeton Community Television, and Raritan Valley Community College for hosting us tonight. I'm Sadaf Jaffer, and I hope to earn your vote for General Assembly in Legislative District 16. I'm running for Assembly to continue my life's work, which is to serve the community and make positive change. I'm a researcher at Princeton University, and I have served for 2 terms as mayor of Montgomery Township. As a public servant, I focus on community building, connecting residents with resources they need, and making sure all voices are heard. As mayor, I work to ensure the safety of Montgomery Township residents during the COVID-19 pandemic, enabling our town to take swift action and keep infection rates low. My experience as a government official and scholar have prepared me to fight tough battles for this district. As a member of the Assembly, I will work to guarantee as much prosperity as I can for everyone in this district by pursuing an economic recovery that creates green jobs, promotes civil and human rights, and empowers an inclusive public health approach to COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now start the questions. And I can assure you I have more questions than I can get through. So just so you, if I don't read your question, it is only for that reason. This will go first to Mr. Fryman. Will you support ending college tuition and provide the funding to do so?
I think I would actually expand that question to what do we do to help people succeed and train for careers? I don't think college funding, college unto itself is a career path that everyone should take. And I don't think it's appropriate for all individuals. So your question might be better off asked of saying, would I support helping people who are graduating from high school prepare for careers, including college funding? And the answer is yes, we have to make it easier and more affordable for people to prepare. There is economics associated with what you can do and how fast you can do it. But we absolutely, as government, should not have students, regardless of whether they're training for a trade school or training for going through their college degree, to come out with this huge burden of debt. We have to make that more affordable for everyone. So I do support ways of getting there, but I think it should be broader than just those interested in seeking a 4-year degree or beyond.
Dr. Jaffer?
So as a college professor, obviously higher education is very dear to my heart, but I also came from a middle-class background. There was nothing to guarantee that I would have access to the types of institutions I was able to attend. And that was because of scholarships, because of support that I was able to gain. But I know that I'm of a privileged minority, and that's not fair. Everyone should have access to high-quality higher education. New Jersey takes pride in the fact that we have the #1 public school system in the country. And that's wonderful for K through 12 education. But I do think that we need to provide that opportunity for higher education as well. And there are various paths that people can take, should take. But as a scholar of the humanities, I don't think that it's all about what career you're going to go into. It's about examining the world around you, having an understanding of, how to tell fact from fiction, how to know if what you're being told is actually based in research or not. We've seen the deficits in our country over this past year of people who just don't know who to trust. They don't know if they should trust public health officials or someone else when it comes to taking safety precautions. And we need to change that. So if we want to have a society that focuses on critical thinking, in which we're all educated, we all understand the world around us, I do think that we should support higher education for anyone who wants to pursue that path. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac.
Thank you. I didn't go to college. Like I said, I worked for the IBEW Local 102, but I went into the Army and I learned trade through there and through VOTEC in Somerset County here. My son, he started off his college career in Raritan Valley and he's at Rutgers right now, finishing up his last year at Rutgers. So I see the bills right in front of me every month, what it's going to cost and what it's going to, every student that I know of in those colleges, in any college, are going to graduate and have a mountain of debt that they're most likely never going to be able to climb and get over. There's just no way. There should be lower interest loans if we had to go to that point first. Very low interest, because some of the interest on the loans right now that I'm looking at for some of the kids that we've been helping out in Manville with their school funding, it's gonna be like owing $500,000 by the time they're done, and that's not fair. You know, we teach our kids. When I was on the school board, we teach our kids from first grade all the way up, go to college to get a degree. And I agree wholeheartedly that college isn't for everyone. But to the kids that get to college, they shouldn't have this brick wall as soon as they graduate. They need a hand on it. We have to come up with a solution, a lot better than we've been doing now, to give our kids a brighter future once they graduate college and get on with their career and their life. Thank you.
Mr. Panico.
Thank you. Education is my core. I love education. I've been on the school board for 9 years now. But to say that everybody needs to go to college is the wrong thing, like my colleagues have said. Joe Lukac, you just said you went to Somerset County Road Technical School, right? And I heard Mr. Fryman say that he supports multiple pathways, both to career and to college. But over the last 4 years, he's cut almost $1 million from the very school that Joe Lukac went to. So it's hard to say that you're prioritizing multiple pathways when you continue to cut the funding that allows people to exceed. I am about education. I'm here because I love education, and it's been my history, my experience. I've been a professor at this very school that you're all sitting in today. I've sat in this room and helped professors here develop new curricular pathways to graduating from Raritan Valley. Everyone needs the opportunity to go to college. Private-public partnerships can get us there. What we don't need are legislators in Trenton like Roy Fryman who continue to cut funding for our most valuable asset in New Jersey, and that's our future. If you elect our opponents this November, you will continue to see cuts across the board to what is most important in New Jersey. Thank you.
Does anyone wish to rebut? All right, seeing none, the next question will go first to Dr. Jaffer. How important do you believe diverse representation is in government? And what would be your plans to increase, if you believe it's important, what would be your plans to increase participation of classically marginalized communities?
Thank you so much. I think diversity is extremely important in politics. It's the only way that we can make decisions that represent the best interest of everyone. I actually first got interested and involved in politics when I heard that the United States was 75th in the world in terms of women's representation in politics. And that I thought was a shame. That's not where we should be. We should be way ahead of other countries. And so I decided to run because if I want other women to run, I felt I needed to run as well and be that example. And I will say that I've seen so many times that it does make a difference. During the pandemic, I had multiple women in Montgomery from different racial and ethnic backgrounds come to me and let me know that they were experiencing domestic violence. And so I would try to get them the resources they needed. We tried to put those resources front and center in our COVID response. And I often asked myself, if I was a man serving as mayor, would they have felt as comfortable coming to me? I don't know, but I do think that there is a connection in the sense of comfort when there is someone who is like you in office. Similarly, there have been times when immigrant groups have felt more comfortable coming to me and letting me know about some of their fears or their concerns. In Montgomery, on my first year in local government, there was an anti-Muslim bias crime where someone left pork on a Muslim family's car. And we started a group called Montgomery Mosaic to talk about anti-Black racism, anti-immigrant violence, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and how to confront it. And we've built so many connections through that, and it's made our community more resilient, stronger, and more connected. And that's what I hope that we see throughout the state. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac?
Thank you. As I said before, I grew up in Manville, and when we were growing up, my mom was a single mother, 3 kids, working 3 jobs. So we were taught a lot better. We didn't see color. We didn't see anything. We were told everybody next to you and in front of you and behind you are the same exact as you are. And we were brought up in that respectful environment, and I don't forget it. as a councilman, as an Army man. When we were in the Army, everyone's a brother and a sister there. We're one team because we know we have to rely on each other's lives to hopefully survive any kind of combat or any situation. When I was on the school board in Manville, we had a very big issue. And one of the reasons why I ran originally was because of bullying. Bullying because of race, bullying because of overweightness, bullying because of everything and anything you'll name it under the bully tent. And I fought to put a stop to it. We challenged our administrators and our teachers to come up with new and innovative programs to stop bullying. We got Stomp Out involved. We did a lot of stuff with the kids. We did after school programs on it, and the kids accepted it. Now, whether the kids were learning it at home or not, we just can't say. But we started addressing it in Manville, and you go to Manville now and those kids treat each other with respect the way I was brought up and the way we were probably mostly all brought up in this room. Thank you.
Mr. Panico.
Thank you. I understand that there are race-based incidents around this community and around the state and around the country, which divide more than they unify. And I also know that my perspective is limited, just like every single person across this world's perspective is limited. This year on the school board, I recognized that, and I put together a team that we called our RED Committee, Racism, Equity, and Diversity Committee. I didn't appoint myself to serve on it, but I put together a group of people that represented all walks of life from across our community, all colors, creeds, sexualities, all marginalized groups, so that we could use them as a sounding board for policy, for decision-making, for activities, for functions, for changes that we needed, because we knew that we don't have a global perspective, and it's a matter of leaning on everyone. No matter who you are, your perspective is limited to your experience, and we need to rely on others to give us a more full view of the blind spots that we have in our life. So, to say that we're limited is just not true. We are only limited by the people and the resources on which we lean. And I have done a great job over the past career, really putting together a group that represents all walks of life and relying on them for resources and information and perspective that I otherwise wouldn't have if I didn't think globally outside of just myself. Thank you.
Mr. Fryman.
Thank you. Thanks for asking this question. Racial diversity or diversity in general, whether it's gender diversity or sexuality diversity, is not something we do because it's politically correct. We do it because we get better outcomes. We do it because it's fair and the equitable thing to do. When you get people together that have different perspectives, that have different experiences, you get more richness to problem solving than you typically get. That is the ultimate value. We need to be rewarding that. We need to be encouraging that. When I was a freshman 4 years ago, joining the assembly, I was proud to say that more than 60% of those in the freshman class in the Democratic Party were either people of color or women. A huge shift from historic where it has been. We have programs in place to help those that want to get engaged in government, particularly women and people of color to rise up. And there are training programs and ways to get engaged because it starts at a younger age. And we have to encourage it and have to make a more welcoming environment. We get better outcomes based upon bringing everyone to the table.
Does anyone wish rebuttal, extra comments? I'm going to take a question that came online. The previous ones have been from those in the audience. It will go first to Mr. Lukac. The state of New Jersey has about $4 billion left from the federally funded American Rescue Plan. What would be your priorities for the use of that money?
Well, thank you again. $4 billion. It's a lot of money when there's quite a few people in this state suffering and trying to struggle to get through their day every day. Keep the roof over their head, decide whether they're going to pay their mortgage this week or feed their kids, their family, or get their kids the shoes they need. I think it's time that someone in this state goes down to Trenton and thinks about every single resident in this state, not special interests, not pork and fat in the budget. That's not going to help every single working family in this state. This needs to be put back into the people's pockets. It needs to help people. It needs to help small businesses that have been decimated first by the pandemic, and now in most parts around here, especially in my town, during a flood, a disaster from Ida. We have to start helping our people. We got to give them a little lift up so they can make it and succeed in life. Because if every single working family is working and succeeding in this state's going to become one of the greatest states in this country. Right now, they're struggling. I'm out there every day. Every year I've run, no matter what I run for, I go to every single door and I get an answer from everybody knows that in this room that's a politician. You go to somebody's door, they're going to tell you the truth. They won't say it in a public meeting. And I'm there to defend those people, and I will take their voice down to Trenton and get this thing done for them.
Thank you. Mr. Panico.
Great question. Thank you for that. I could tell you the things that I would do are the exact things that our current legislature and Roy Fryman aren't doing. We can start with the $9 billion loan that we took out about a year ago today. Non-callable. We couldn't pay it back early. We had a $4 billion surplus. We had a $9 billion debt. We couldn't put our surplus to our debt service. That's ridiculous. It is poor fiscal management. What I would do is I'd put it towards the very question that you opened with, education. How do we support our future better in a way other than education? That's where we can use that funding. We can use it towards infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways, tunnels, buses, transportation, connectivity, electricity. These are all things that are a desperate need here in New Jersey right now. We don't need the pork that the Democratic majority and Roy Fryman continue to spend money on. We need real solutions, we need smart fiscal planning, and we need problem solving for New Jersey residents. I don't need it on special interests. I don't need it for a marina or a golf course or an art museum. That's not what our budget is for. That's not what the $4 billion in surplus is for. But when you elect Roy Fryman, or if you elect Roy Fryman, and if you elect Sadaf Jaffer, it will continue to go to that. You need to elect conservatives who will spend that money to support you. Thank you.
Mr. Fryman.
Thank you. So let's take a look at that. It was actually over $6 billion that we received from the federal government. It's broken down into 50% can be spent in year one, 25% in year two, and 25% in year three. So that's the structure of how that money. The key to taking a look at how to spend it is to recognize that these are one time. This is a large lump sum that's coming in. So to take a look at programs that you can do, not creating long-term burdens associated with it, not starting a program, but making sure that you have funding enough to support it. Very specifically, I have already put out there that we should spend a significant portion of this to reinvigorate the unemployment trust fund. Unemployment for all people who have employees, we're looking at a 3-year raise over the unemployment tax because of all the people that are on unemployment. I think this would be a way this is a good utilization of that money to reinvigorate that fund. We also should put it into infrastructure projects. Clearly, we've come out of this storm recognizing that we need better storm management. We need to recognize our environment. We need to invest in our education. We have roadways and bridges that have been ignored for decades that need that. And I'm very pleased to say, while I would like to use it for debt reduction, the money is prohibited for that. The one-time projects is really what makes sense.
Dr. Jaffer.
Thank you. So building upon Assemblyman Fryman's comments in terms of infrastructure, I think obviously since we're emerging from a public health crisis, investing in our public health infrastructure is crucial, and assuring that we have equitable access to vaccines and to other care across the board, regardless of people's economic status or racial background. We also should invest in our transportation and make sure that we have ways for people to get to work, that we're investing in our innovation economy and creating green jobs so that we have a recovery that keeps the climate crisis in mind. And that is not even to get into continuing the small business grants that I know that the Assembly has been already providing, and then emergency aid like food aid and housing that so many people are in need of right now, especially in light of the storms. Thank you.
Anyone wish to rebut?
I would.
30 seconds.
I just want to clarify. There was my opponent said something about borrowing $9 billion. That's an inaccurate statement. There was an authorization to borrow $9 billion. What was borrowed was $3.7 billion at 2%. And therefore, and it is non-callable, which means that we're paying off much higher loans. It's like if you had a very low interest rate loan, you'd pay off your higher ones first. And that is the approach we're doing with the debt reduction that I was the author of, paying off nearly $4 billion of those bonds.
Anyone else?
And then we
Mr.
sit here,
Panico, 30 seconds.
we talk about one-time projects, but we refer to the unemployment trust fund. I can assure you that unemployment, especially under Roy Fryman, is not going to be one time for folks who own and work for small businesses in New Jersey. Over the last year, 1/3 of small businesses in New Jersey closed. Those folks needed unemployment. Unemployment is not a one-time thing. We can't talk about using one-time money for something that's sustainable like unemployment.
Thank you. The next question will start with Mr. Panico. I'm going to word it just slightly differently.
All right.
If elected, what sort of programs do you think the legislature should do to support our small businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. You know, I'm an MBA. I've run a small business here in New Jersey. I still do. I've worked for small, medium businesses across the state. I know the struggle that they go through. I know the struggle that our small businesses across the state have gone through, not only in the past year, but in the past 4 years. When I think about programs that we need in order to really bolster growth, we need pathways for success, innovation centers. When we think about the new minimum wage, we need to think about payroll supersized deductions so that our truly small business owners, our Main Street, is not affected negatively by these programs we're putting in to benefit our citizens. So really, it is a cross sampling, not only of grants, like Dr. Jaffer referred to, but it's also opportunities for small business owners to succeed. You know, we have tons and tons of sole proprietors and folks who are working for organizations under 5 employees. They need opportunity as well. So when I think about innovation zones where we fund special projects, when I think about opportunities for small businesses in the green space, this is really what's going to change New Jersey. When I think about security, though, from the past 4 years of damaging policy across the state, I have to say we need to get away from that and we need to focus on opportunity for our small businesses and our small business owners.
Mr. Fryman.
Thank you. So there is bringing in small business and supporting small business, and it's a difficult topic because not all small businesses are the same. Not all small businesses look the same. You might have a vision of Main Street, but it also could be somebody who's running something that's internet-based. And we need to keep that in mind when we're looking to find ways of enabling commerce in general overall. It's a fallacy to just use one broad term. I am very proud of the litany of legislation I've put forth to help small businesses over the past 4 years. During the pandemic, I was the one that sponsored the legislation that enabled the EDA to open up tens of millions, and now it's up to over hundreds of millions of dollars for our small businesses, for recognizing you need to ease regulation and allowing them to be more nimble and support them overall. There's a multitude of things, and it's going to be starting with changing the environment and changing the partnership and facilitating. A simple little thing of one of the bills that we just put forth and put into law is electronic building permits. Easing that process. Something as simple as that drives businesses crazy. And we have to facilitate that so people can do that online rather than taking time out of their incredibly busy schedules. This is partnering with our business community, and I'm very proud of my record. I'm very proud of the support also and recognition coming from the business community of the things that I have done.
Dr. Jaffer.
Thank you. When we had the pandemic that we all faced, as mayor, one of the first things that I did was put together a business task force. And through that task force, we spoke with the business owners, talked to them locally about what they needed. And really, as Assemblyman Fryman said, a lot of it was just navigating processes, making logistical processes easier. They needed to adapt their businesses to the COVID environment. So we waived permits. We worked with them to make sure that it was as seamless of as a process as possible. So I would just say that my leadership style is very much an engaged, consultative leadership style. So if I do have the honor of being elected, I would certainly put together a focus group and a forum for business owners in this district, in the 16th district, to talk about the specific issues that they're facing, how the state can bring those resources that only the state has to these businesses, how we can have synergies and work together, because maybe everybody doesn't have to do it all on their own. But I think that, ultimately, all of us here agree, I'm sure, that small businesses are the heart of our communities and we have to support them. And it's something that I believe that the Assembly has followed through on in terms of the investments and the focus that they've had on those small businesses. We know it's been a difficult time, but let's keep in mind that we were going through a global pandemic. And I think that we have invested as much as we could, and we will continue to do so to support those businesses that are the heart of our communities. Thank you.
Mr. Lukat?
Thank you. When I first ran for council 5 years ago, I also went to every single small business in Manville. And I said, how would things be changed where it would make it a lot easier for you to do what you do for the community? And the first thing they said was permits. Well, 5 years ago, we already electronic permitted everything in town. Our code enforcement, he could be driving around and get a ping on his iPad that we got him to get over there and inspect, to get a permit. But the second thing they said to me, and this was the one that always stuck in the back of my head, is get the government out of our way and out of our back door. Because as fast as profits are coming in, they're going right out the back door through over taxation, through over regulation. Now that we've been running on this race, and Vinny and I and Mike himself, we've been out on that trail. We've been to almost every town in this district. And the number one thing the small business owners are saying right now that would help them more than anything is for government to get out of their way and let them do what they do. We do what we do. I'm an electrician. I don't expect somebody to get in my way and tell me that's not an electrician how to do my job. I don't tell small business owners how they can do the best they can do for their business and help the community out every day. Thank you.
Anyone wish further comment?
Yeah, Dr. Jaffer said that if she was elected, she would put together focus groups on small businesses. And I can appreciate that. Focus groups are difficult to run and difficult to do. And the reason why I know that is because we're already doing them. It doesn't matter whether or not I'm elected. I am working for our small businesses today, and I will continue to do that regardless of the outcome in November. I'll give you an example. After the flood in Manville, Saturday, I was off work for the first time because I do have a full-time job. We showed up in downtown Manville. We met with the business owners that we had just met with earlier that week to roll up our sleeves and get to work. We do work for businesses now. We will continue to do it regardless whether or not we get elected.
Thank you. Any other comments? This will go first to Mr. Fryman. After the ravaging storm hit our district a few weeks ago, climate change is at the forefront of everyone's mind. What policies could be implemented to protect our environment and ensure a greener future for the people of the 16th district?
So I thought actually your question was going to go, what do we do to avoid some of the additional storm damage? We are already, New Jersey is one of the leaders as it relates to taking steps regarding climate change, building the offshore, commitment to making sure that we have 100% renewable energy, expanding our electric vehicle recharging and incentive programs continuously, looking at changing out our buses to go electric as well. There is not one cause that happened just overnight that caused our climate change. What's going to take is continual effort and a boatload of small initiatives and large initiatives. Small initiatives are building rain gardens to help with stormwater management, making sure that the people that are living in floodplains have the ability with Blue Acres to make a move if they want to make a move. And working on a regional basis A town such as Manville cannot, unto themselves, prevent storms from hitting them and flooding from hitting them. It has to take place upstream. It has to take place on a regional and a statewide basis. That is the broad approach that we have to take. We did it in the 70s associated with the Clean Water Act, where the federal government came in and helped with large infrastructure and then left it up to municipalities to maintain those clean waterways. We can do it again.
Dr. Jaffer?
Thank you. Certainly, the climate crisis is very frightening for all of us, especially those of us who have young children, and we want to ensure that they live in a world that's safe and that doesn't have wild fluctuations in weather and damage to their lives. So I would, agreeing with my running mate, Assemblyman Fryman, we need to continue the investment in wind energy and diversifying the energy sources that we use, in investing in electric vehicles, in green transportation, and as I mentioned earlier, green jobs, thinking about providing people with the training, the infrastructure, the knowledge, so that the work that they do is working towards a safer and healthier environment. That's very, very crucial because we can't continue on the way that we've been going. And this pandemic actually gives us an opportunity to start afresh, to refocus our senses on the climate crisis. But first of all, we need to acknowledge what's taking place. And I think that leading with facts, with research, with a perspective that is provided by the experts in climate change is something that I would be committed to. And I'm proud to have the endorsement of the League of Conservation Voters. So you can know for sure that the environment is very important to me. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac?
Thank you. In Manville, we've probably been way ahead of the pace on this green, on anything green. We have a sustainable team in Manville that is lights out. I mean, the couple that started our sustainable green team in Manville, they actually give the classes down at the League of Municipalities convention. We've got rain gardens in Manville. We've got rain barrels in Manville. We've got grant programs for rain barrels so folks can come down, get a rain barrel, pay for it, and they get about 85% of their money back. The Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts volunteered to paint the rain barrels. They look really nice. The one problem I have with the majority down in Trenton right now is every day they take this green environment thing and they say, we're for open space. We're for saving the environment. But yet with their COA policies, they destroy all the open spaces. In Princeton, they're destroying a piece of land that everybody's in an uproar about. That connects to trails, to nature trails. I like hiking. My son likes hiking. All right. We got to stop. Manville's biggest problem, and we had a fix for it 12 years ago and 8 years ago. And the federal government came down and said, right in a council meeting, I wasn't on the governing body then, I was in the crowd. They said it's not worth the investment to the government. And a few months later, $1 trillion went to Haiti for a disaster that they had in their land. So $240 million wasn't worth it to save a town here. And I'll tell you what, one last, if I may.
You can do it on the rebuttal.
Sure.
Mr. Panico?
Can you repeat the question for me?
Yes, it was, after the ravaging storm, climate change is at the forefront. What kind of policies would you support to protect our environment and ensure a greener future for the people of the 16th?
Thank you. Let's talk about the ravaging storm. On Wednesday, the storm in Manville, we moved our team into Manville, brought a group of volunteers in, and we started cleaning out basements, helping people move things out of their garage. We didn't say who we were. We didn't go in there to campaign. We walked in there to help our neighbors and our friends. On Saturday of that same week, our opponent showed up with a case of water and a bottle of bleach. They put it down on the table and they started talking to folks in the room. You know what they started talking about? Climate change. Climate change is critically important, but to the 90 people that were in the Red Cross shelter sleeping on cots, what they didn't care about right then was climate change. They wanted to know how they were going to get back in their homes. They wanted to know how they were going to put food on their table. They wanted to know when their next hot shower and hot meal was going to be. Climate change is something we need to discuss, but we need to do it when it's appropriate. We need to do it when the folks that are in Manville are back in their homes. When I think about what we can do individually, though, on an individual level, It's all about green energy. I drive a hybrid. I love my hybrid. It's on the parking lot. Honda Accord. Great car, by the way. I recommend you do it. Do your part. It's difficult, though, because there's so much red tape down in Trenton. We need to break down barriers and allow people to put in things like solar, geothermal, wind energy in multi-unit houses. We need to give people opportunity to be green because they will choose that if they can. Right now, we don't have pathways for that for everyday New Jersey citizens.
Rebuttal. Mr. Lukac, did you want to finish your thought?
Yes, if I may. I just wanted to add, and if any of you could have been down there, and I know Vinny, Mike, and a few others were there, you've seen the donations that came in from around the communities and around this state. Manville was worth it to them. So if they were not worth it to the federal government, then shame on them. They should have been here on the ground helping our people out. There's still people sleeping in their cars, living in their cars in our Lost Valley section. Still. And all I get from Trenton and the federal government is we put it on Facebook. Well, guess what, folks? Those folks don't have their phones anymore or computers because they were lost in the flood because they were evacuated to save their own lives in their basements and their houses.
Mr. Lukac, time. Anyone else wish to use your
Sure.
30 seconds? Yes.
It is disappointing to think that the opponents are politicizing this event. As legislators, what we're doing is we have been working around the clock. We've been setting up in Manville, particularly to help the affected families, coordinating information sessions so people know how to get access to services, working closely and actually pressuring the other agencies to make sure they deliver on housing, actually show up and give them the hotel rooms that they need. These are the things that are taking place.
Anyone else? Mr. Paniker, do you wish to say something?
Yeah, look,
30 seconds.
to say that we're politicizing this is a joke. We showed up with no names on our shirts, with no hats that had our logos on them, and we started cleaning out. We're not politicizing this. You want to talk about politicizing this? On Wednesday after the storm, a week later, there was a table set up in Manville with campaign literature on it. There's a website set up right now with LD16 resources on it that's actually a campaign website. You scroll to the bottom, what does it say? Paid for by Roy Fryman for Assembly. You want to talk about politicizing a natural disaster? That's doing it. Not putting on shoes, jeans, and a t-shirt and going to help people clean out their houses.
Thank you. We ready for the next question? This will go first to Dr. Jaffer. Will you support the unconditional release of all New Jersey residents currently detained by ICE and the closing of all ICE detention centers in our state with the release and not the transfer of the detainee? So it's kind of multiple issues in that question.
Sure. I don't believe in immigrant detention. I think that it is a waste of resources. It terrorizes people and it punishes them in a way and it stigmatizes them. It hurts communities. And so, yes, I would be in favor of not detaining migrants. I think that there are far better ways for us to process people's documentation. We know that there is no pathway for most people who want to achieve legal documentation status. That needs to be fixed. If we look historically in this country, people, especially those from Europe, were able to just get on a boat, come over here, get off the boat. If they were here for 5 years, they became citizens. The current immigration regime is frankly racist, and many of the procedures and processes are as well. So yes, I'm in favor of ending immigrant detention. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac.
Thank you. I'm in favor of ending partial immigration. I mean, these folks that are in there, they're being held. They have to be screened, make sure they're not wanted for anything, a serious crime somewhere in the country or in their own country. You know, there's been a lot of cases where a few slept through that they had, you know, pedophilia charges in their country or even murder in some cases. We have to make sure we can't just close the doors off. This country was built by immigrants. Nobody was born here and they were the first American here unless you were Native American. It shouldn't be that hard. Talking about politicizing on both ends with this issue, they should start a process, and it has to be a fair process, and it can't be like digging for gold somewhere in Alaska. I mean, set one standard of how to become a citizen in this country. And at that point, you're going to be detained. You're going to be screened for health reasons. Okay. My mother had polio when she was a child. She got her vaccination. She's fine. And here I am, or I wouldn't have been here. But certain diseases that we've eradicated in this country have to remain that way. We've eradicated them, and we've made it a better environment to come to from other countries, whoever needs our shelter and our help. But we can't just sit here and open the door and say, everybody go. And we're letting out criminals on the streets. Okay. We've all heard both stories of this. Thank you.
Mr. Panico?
Thank you. The basis of all decisions that I make are founded on two things: opportunity and security. How do we give people the opportunity to have a hand up, not a handout? And how do we give people the security to build a family and establish roots here in New Jersey safely? They're not mutually exclusive. They happen together. And when you look at this issue, they can happen together. We need to give people the opportunity to become U.S. citizens. That's the American dream. To come here, start a business, have a family, grow here in America and New Jersey. What I think we need to do is safely. We need to do it safely. We need to make sure that we are properly screening our immigrants. We do need to make sure we are properly giving them the vetting on their path to citizenship. We do need to make sure that every person who has the opportunity to be here in New Jersey is done so safely.
Mr. Fryman?
I'm not sure I heard the answer to your question yet from my opponents, so let me attempt to offer one. I don't think it's right to pull somebody over and then detain them because of their immigration status. However, we absolutely should be detaining people who are criminals. The definition of immigration status to me is not necessarily criminal. It's criminal, we're talking about felonies, we're talking about violent crimes. No, those people, anyone who commits those, it doesn't matter any status, needs to be detained. That said, I actually agree with some of the points of my opponents of that we do need a fairer, more comprehensive way for citizenship. These are our neighbors. These are a part of our community. These are not violent criminals. There are violent criminals in all walks of life. Just because your immigration status doesn't automatically brand you as a violent criminal. And I reject that notion. So I do not think that I should be detaining people purely because of their status.
Anyone have anything further?
Look,
Rebuttal.
but by no means have we said that we're going to rip people from cars and detain them. By no means have we said that we're going to let out criminals from jails. But what we do need to make sure, though, are folks who are detained in New Jersey are done so safely. And when I think about the women's prison in Clinton, the women there were not safe. Under Roy Fryman's watch and Phil Murphy's watch, they were not safe. So we can't sit here and talk about what's fair and just when we have actions going unchecked by the folk at this end of the table.
If I may.
Yes,
Yes.
30 seconds.
Same thing as my running mate here said, you know, we're not pulling people over and detaining them. You know, my grandparents came here from Slovakia when they were 6. They sat at Ellis Island, they got screened for health reasons, and then they were told where they were going to live and where they were going to work for the first 5 years, and they reported back to their immigration officer. But we also have to have a clear path for our folks, our immigrants that come in. Like I said before, we can't put up a brick wall. Give them one clear path to become citizens.
Are we ready? What would be a forum without a property tax question? A legislative forum without a property tax question. This is one that was submitted online. Very simple, in 90 seconds. And we'll start with Mr. Lukac. How will you address New Jersey's over-reliance on the property tax?
Thank you. Well, I don't need any notes for this one. 5 years ago, I got on the council and we sat there and even we worked across aisles with each other, everything. And we said we were going to still honor the 2% tax cap. And we've done that. And we remain to do that from a municipal standpoint. What we've done in Manville is very simple things that we do at home, folks. We took a list of wants and needs. We separated them and we did the things that the town needed to survive, needed to go forward. The wants are just little side projects that people would like to see to sometimes over glorify themselves. Down in Trenton, I just don't, I see a lot of the wants being passed through the budgets, passed through everything that's done down there lately. And the needs are just, you know, shoved off in the corner until somebody's up for reelection or there is an issue down in Trenton with somebody up for reelection. It shouldn't be that way. Let's get this thing back on track. There is just so much, you know, they talked about the surplus money before. Spread that out to keep taxes under control, to stabilize them. You know, don't ever listen to anybody. If somebody tells you they're going to lower your taxes, we all know what the story is with that. You're going to stabilize their taxes. We've done the best we could. We are a 2 square mile town. We've been one of the most underfunded school districts in this state in the last 25 years. We bought fire trucks, hired cops, hired employees. Everybody got a raise when they were supposed to. And we still stayed and honored that 2% cap. And I think I want to bring that down to Trenton for every resident in this state. Thank you.
Mr. Panico?
Let me be clear. My history here shows fair and conservative budgeting. Hunterdon Central's gone debt-free as of this month while I was board president. You asked, though, what we would do to balance the budget in New Jersey and get our over-reliance on state money removed. I could tell you I would do what Roy Fryman hasn't done. I'd stand up for my neighbors, I'd stand up for the residents of LD16, and I'd stand up for taxpayers around the state. When I look at the $11.6 billion increase, it included things like a $4 million golf course in Essex County that Roy Fryman voted for. This year, it included a French art museum at $24 million in Jersey City. It included a $1.5 million marina in Woodbridge. You know what Roy Fryman did? He hid under his desk and he abstained. He wouldn't stand up for you. I would stand up for you. I would cut the fat from the budget. I would get rid of the special interest projects that he won't stand up for.
Mr. Fryman?
The economics in New Jersey need to be addressed on 2 different approaches. One is being smarter with the dollars. What do you have? And the other one is also then growing your revenues at the same time with economic growth. So let me first talk about being smarter with the dollars. It's a matter of taking down the debt. So we're not paying $300 million a year. That's that's what we did this year. It's about providing tax relief that we've done 9 separate tax relief elements in this year's budget, making it more affordable for the middle class. It's also looking at more shared services, rather getting away from the duplication. We're addicted in New Jersey to the local rule and having local control, and it comes at its cost. And we have to take a look at, and some towns have done a very good job at looking at shared services. And that's something we need to expand and keep on encouraging and enabling overall. We also have to look at our environment, business climate, and to grow it. Because you also want to create, it's easy to slash. You can do it indiscriminately. The question is, how do you invest? How do you do both at the same time? And that's the way I think you need to look at that. And I do think there's legitimacy of saying, should we have the same reliance on property taxes for our schools? Because that's predominantly where that property tax comes from. Everyone at this dais knows that. So it's a matter of taking a look at how do we redesign the overall revenue structure and make it more affordability, not based upon property values.
Dr. Jaffer?
So picking up where Assemblyman Fryman left off, the vast majority of that property tax bill does go to our school districts, and our school districts are our pride. As I mentioned, I'm very proud of the fact that we have the #1 public school education system in the country, but that shouldn't necessarily be funded primarily or as heavily through property taxes. Property taxes ultimately are a regressive tax that taxes most people's primary asset that they have. So if we could invest more from the state level and lower that burden on local communities, that would help with the property tax burden. But how do we get to that point? We need obviously to work on having good fiscal management, and that's something that I focused on in Montgomery. Under my leadership, Montgomery Township has achieved a AAA credit rating, one of only 5% of municipalities in New Jersey to have that rating. So I also created a budget and finance advisory committee for members of the public to look over the budget, to give their feedback. And I would certainly want to do something like that for people in the district to look at the state budget as well, to understand it, to give their feedback. I think participatory budgeting is extremely important. So those are, some ideas, some thoughts, but certainly we all can appreciate that property taxes are a burden, and we need to work towards helping the people in our state move past that. Thank you.
Any comments?
Look, our opponents over there talk about investing more on the state level in education. Great, I'm all for it. I've said that 100 times over. They're not doing it. They're doing the opposite. Talk to the people at Flemington-Raritan Regional School District, the K-12 in Flemington-Raritan. Lost $1.9 million while Roy Fryman was in office. This year, he abstained on a $15 million demolition project in Camden. 7.5 years, that school could have been funded at the level it was 4 years ago. Let's not talk about easy to slash and being smart with money when we're cutting from schools and giving to special interest projects.
So let me correct some abuse with the numbers that are being tossed around. Over the past 4 years, our district has seen a 12% increase in school funding for the entire district. And that does not include the $12 million that we received this past year from the federal government for our schools. So when we start talking about slashing and reductions, let's keep perspective. We made the largest investment this year in state history in education. So I reject that notion.
Look,
No,
LD16.
I'm sorry, you've had a rebuttal.
Okay.
Put it in your closing comments.
Oh, yeah.
This one will go first to Mr. Panico. What specific recommendations do you have for changes, or if you may, perhaps you don't see any need for changes in New Jersey's criminal justice system?
It's a great question. It starts with supporting our police and supporting fair policing across this state. I've cops in the family, I have law enforcement in the family on all levels. I have to say I back our men in blue. I will continue to do that. I said one of my foundational platforms is security. Police and law enforcement help us have security in our everyday lives. What I also think is we need to stop unfunded mandates. I'm sure my running mate will talk about the body camera issues that we have across this state. I support body cameras for police. I support accountability. I absolutely do. But when they come down with unfunded mandates, when they come down as a burden to local property taxpayers, can't support that.
Mr. Fryman, criminal justice system changes.
This is a significant issue that New Jersey must continue to address and must do it aggressively. It's not hard to look at and to see the distinction of those communities that are being disadvantaged by our criminal justice system versus others. It's to take a look at simple things such as marijuana legalization. Marijuana usage across the state has no distinction by communities, by color, by racial background. Yet those that were arrested and incarcerated were overwhelmingly people of color and racial disparity. The people that get pulled over are overwhelming and get ticketed are overwhelmingly people of color. And it's not because of higher levels of infractions. There is inherently challenges that must be addressed. We have to take a look at how this is a systemic issue, and we need to take a step back and realize that. Because when you take a look at the results, you take a look at the data, it points to nothing else. This is not intentional. This is a systemic issue. And we have to address it that way overall. This is not an anti-police, because I'm very proud to, while my opponent feels he's supported by the police, they actually support me as well in these efforts going forward.
Dr. Jaffer.
Over the past year, we not only experienced the COVID pandemic, but we experienced renewed calls for racial justice. And this is something that I saw as mayor of Montgomery Township. The heartbreaking murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and far too many others wakened our national consciousness and made us feel like we needed to see a change. And that change has to happen in every state, in every community in this country. And I'm very proud of the work that we did in Montgomery Township in partnership with our police leadership, as well as members of the Black community. We were able to facilitate a meeting where members of the Black community could talk to our police leadership about their concerns, about their fears, about how to build trust, how to build communication. And we need those efforts to happen statewide, and they have been. I participated in many workshops and panels that were organized specifically by the Attorney General's office last year, and I saw the progress that was being made to make sure that we are, as equitable as possible. I learned about the fact that New Jersey has outlawed many of those chokeholds and things that are the most cruel that were being done in other states, but we need to keep progressing in that direction. We need to keep going in the right direction. And that can only happen if we work in partnership with our communities, particularly those communities that experience the worst forms of racism, as well as our police leadership. So certainly we do need to see change, and I'm proud to be a part of that in the past, and I hope to continue to be a part of that positive change in the future. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac.
Thank you. My dad, he was in law enforcement for 25 years. My stepfather's cousin was the chief of police of Manville for about 8 to 10 years, and he passed away suddenly of a heart attack. I'm all for the body cameras. Like my running mate says, love it. It protects both sides of this whole issue. It really does. It takes liability away from townships, and it protects the person that is being incarcerated. The problem is, we were given the money to buy the cameras by the state. And that's $68,000, excuse me. What we weren't given, and in Manville's tight system and with the 189 flood buyouts we just have survived through before this disaster, is the $300,000 plus a year cloud coverage for the body cams. You could implement all these great tools for the cops, and I'm not saying every cop's perfect. They're not. My dad used to say, every group has a bad apple in it. My union, we're not all perfect electricians. Every group has a bad apple. So don't punish every single person that's a part of that group. My dad was fair and just his whole life, and so were his family members that were police. I know a lot. I've seen police, things that happen on TV, but in New Jersey, our police are pretty darn good. I'm going to tell you that right now. I would go to bat for every single cop just about in this state. What I won't do is go after them because of one bad apple. That one bad apple has to be incarcerated. They should go to jail, and training should be given to police so it doesn't happen again. Let's learn from our mistakes, not try to cover them up by defunding things. Thank you.
Anyone wish?
Yeah,
An
let's
extra 30
address
seconds?
let's address saying that police support our opponents. To be clear, the police labor union supports the opponents, the same way the teachers union supports the opponents. You go talk to the rank and file, they support us. We have endorsements from police officers, we have endorsements from teachers. We don't have the endorsements of the teachers union or the police officers union because we're doing what's right for the people. Second thing, we need to touch on education very, very quickly. We talked about a 13% increase across the district. That's true. Roy Fryman did get 13% increase across the district. 99% of that increase went to 2 schools across the 16 that are in this LD16 district.
Anyone else? Hold it, please. Anyone else? I'm looking at the time, and what I'm going to take as a last question is, and I will be starting with Mr. Fryman. What committees, if elected, what committees, what area would you hope to be assigned to, and why? In other words, looking to what you feel are your strengths, or where your passion is, or where your knowledge is, and knowing that, of course, you don't control that, but
No.
if elected, you don't control that, but
We do not control our committee assignments. So I'm currently fortunate to serve on the Financial Institutions and Insurance Committee, Transportation Committee, and I'm vice chair of the State and Local Committee. Your question is a hypothetical one of, if I had the ability to choose, there is the Business and Economic Development Committee is something that I believe fits within my background, within my passion. I'd very much like to continue to serve on the Financial Institutions and Insurance Committee because that too, I have skill set associated with it. A Budget Committee, and very much I enjoy working with the state and local government. because that's ultimately where we want to make sure we're getting our services down to and making sure that we're connected and seeing what's working, what's not working overall. So if I had my wish list, that would be on my wish list.
Dr. Jaffer, what areas would be your wish list?
I would certainly like to focus on public health. I think that the experience that I had leading a municipality during the pandemic really opened my eyes to the level of coordination that's needed to make sure that people get the services that they need, to make sure that people get the information they need. There can be so much confusion when people are getting information from different sources. Something that I also focused on in my role as mayor was to really ask for disaggregated data. And what we learned when we disaggregated that data was the fact that COVID was disproportionately impacting minority communities across our county, but also even in Montgomery Township, which came as a shock to some people, but it was important to know. And then we got a vulnerable populations outreach coordinator to make sure that we were reaching people, communicating with them in a language that they could understand, making them feel safe. So those are all things I would like to focus on. I also have an interest in maternal health care based on my own childbirth experience and things that I think could be better for women in this state. We really do need to focus on women's healthcare in New Jersey and be at the forefront of safeguarding women's healthcare when so many states are actually cutting back on it. So those are some of my passions that I would like to focus on in the assembly. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac?
Thank you. Coming from an organized labor background with the construction trades unions, I'd really enjoy being a part of the labor committee down there. And, not just because it's easy for me because I'm in organized labor, but the construction trades unions, the work we've done over the last 35 years has benefited more or less your average working folks, not union members. We've made things better. We've made it a safer environment by enforcing OSHA standards. Another committee I'd like to be on is public health as well. I agree. Everything was in disarray during this pandemic, and it seems like nobody down in Trenton had a what if this happens plan. And if they did, then I guess nobody followed it because it doesn't seem like it to me, or in this country, by the way. But and the other one would be infrastructure and transportation. Honestly, as a combat engineer, we built bridges, and unfortunately, we had to blow them up in some cases. But it's really a passion of mine to our state. Every 1 in 12 bridges in this state is deficient, and it's been far too long. And we've got to get some things going here before we have really major catastrophes happen in this state with bridges and roads. We have to improve. If people are paying one of the highest property taxes in this country, they should have a brand new, nice road and bridge to drive over. Thank you.
Mr. Panico?
Thank you. Great question. I've made it clear here, I'm passionate in my experiences in education. Education is what I want to do. It's our future. It's what allows people to excel within New Jersey. It's that opportunity that I've talked about so much. I would love to be on the education committee. Mr. Lukac referenced the infrastructure and transportation committee. By all means, it's something I would love to do. I speak about it often, how infrastructure is critically important as well. And we're not just talking about roads and bridges and tunnels like you spoke about, Joe. We're talking about connectivity, electricity, the things that everyday New Jerseyans need to survive in 2021. The other thing I'd really like to be on is the Business and Economic Development Committee. When I think about the business climate here in New Jersey, I look at it as ranked last in the country. We need a jumpstart. We need legislators that are going to represent us that actually do something. Legislators who understand small business in New Jersey. Legislators who, quite frankly, care, because we don't have that right now.
I'm going to take closing comments at this point. The candidates have 90 seconds. Again, they drew for the order, and Mr. Lukac will go first.
Thank you. Once again, everyone, thank you for coming tonight. I hope this was enjoyable, being out in a nice group for the first time in probably a long time. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters. I'd like to thank Mr. Fryman and Ms. Jaffer for coming tonight and being a part of this debate with us. And most importantly, I want to thank all of you, the citizens, even at home on TV or on the internet, that took time to be a part of this debate and watch it and try to get educated in the system. As I stated earlier, like I said, I come from a hardworking family. I know what it's like. You can't just sit at your table. We got to stop this whole thing where people are figuring out feed their kids or pay their mortgage. You know, do we buy a car or do we walk and not feed the kids? It shouldn't be that way. This country's too darn great for that. I've proven during my time on the Manville Borough Council that I can work across the aisle to get things done and what is best for our residents, not friends or special interests. I have also stood up quite a few times, as anyone could study Manville, they'll see. I stood up to my own party when I thought the rights of our citizens were in danger or their well-being was in danger or something wasn't just right for them. I will give you my word, as I've done before to our residents in Manville time and time again, I'll be there for you. I'll defend your rights, your freedoms, like I did when I took an oath to serve this country in the Army, and the well-being to the best of my abilities. I will also take your struggles and battles to Trenton, and I hope to get down there and clear the sludge from the pipes of progress once and for all and get us moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Mr. Fryman.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone for attending. Thank you for coordinating this. To my opponents, I also want to thank my opponents for mentioning my name probably 16 times. I appreciate that. I've been proud to serve the past 4 years in the legislature and serving alongside Andrew Zwicker, who I now look forward to serving with him as he moves into the Senate. I'm also very excited to be serving the next 2 years with Untitled Chapter in representing you. Tonight, you're hearing different sides. You're hearing different approaches, different styles, thoughtful approaches. The advantage you have is I have a track record. And I would ask you to look at that track record versus promises and thoughts and ideas of what they may do. And it's because of my track record that I've been able to garner an incredible amount of support behind my campaign. Support that has come from first responders, fire, police, nurses, doctors. Support that has come from educators. Supports that have come from environmentalists, from conservationists, from women's organizations. And support that has come from the business community that have honoring me 2 separate organizations of Legislator of the Year because of the work and how I'm fighting for New Jersey. This has been an incredible honor to serve, and I am very much asking for your support because I'd like to continue the good work that we have done over the past number of years. Thank you.
Mr. Panico.
Thank you for that. I'm excited and honored to be up here. I appreciate the support that I've received thus far. When I think about track records, there are 2 opposing points. I can think about the track record of New Jersey having the highest outmigration over the last 4 years. I can think about New Jersey having the nation's highest or worst business climate. I think about New Jersey failing in COVID and being the world's highest per capita death rate. I can think about 60% increases in municipal projects. Or I can think about the track records of myself. Settle the budget. Negotiated with the teachers across the aisle to settle the contract for the first time before it expired. Eliminated debt. Protected our staff and students from COVID through strong policies. Hunterdon and Central was not the highest in the country or the globe in per capita death like New Jersey was. And when I think about what I'm going to do when I head down to Trenton, it's very easy. I'm going to stand up for you. I'm not going to hide under my desk like a coward. I'm not going to abstain on votes that are important. I'm going to stand up for you and protect you because I represent New Jersey, I care about New Jersey, and I'm part of New Jersey. Thank you.
Dr. Jaffer.
As 2-term mayor of Montgomery Township, I focused on building trust within the community through increased engagement with residents. This community-led approach enabled my administration to create and implement a robust crisis communications plan, which helped Montgomery Township maintain low COVID-19 infection and fatality rates. I also launched a youth leadership council to elevate the voices of young people who are energized to lead. My background as a researcher at Princeton University prepares me to address complex policy issues in a research-based manner. We as a nation are emerging from a traumatic COVID-19 pandemic. At this difficult time, we need elected officials who are able to cope with emergency situations, bring people together for the common good, and heal our wounds to move forward in a positive direction. Despite the challenges we face, I run for office because I'm an optimist at heart. I run for office for my 7-year-old daughter, who deserves a state government that represents her, and for all my neighbors who deserve values-driven elected officials. I'm excited about the opportunity to serve LD16 and be part of our district and our state's continued progress. Thank you.
Now it's appropriate to clap for all of the candidates. Thank you for your participation. I want to thank the candidates for sharing their positions on the issues raised this evening. I want to quickly again thank our sponsors, Montgomery News and Princeton TV. The forum will be rebroadcast on Princeton TV, which is Comcast Channel 30 or Verizon Fios Channel 45. Thanks to the Raritan Valley Community College student government, because they provided this space for us and they provided our timekeeper, and also to the two local League of Women Voters, the Princeton area and Somerset Hunterdon, for organizing. A recording will go on the League's vote411.org site, where you can look up candidates' response, and also on the League of Women Voters of Princeton .org site. Remember, you have 3 ways to vote. You can request a vote by mail ballot from your county clerk, and you can return that voted ballot by mail in a ballot drop box or by returning it directly to your Board of Elections. This year we have early voting on voting machines available in a limited number of sites in each county between Saturday, October 23rd and Sunday, October 31st. And if you're not voting by mail or don't plan to vote early, obviously, we hope you're going to be voting on Election Day, Tuesday, November 2nd, at your polling place between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. The 16th Legislative District covers 4 counties, so to find all the details, go to your own county clerk or Board of Elections website, or you can go to vote.nj.gov, finding out where actual everything is located. So thank you again, and thank you to the candidates. I really appreciate everyone's time. There'll be about a 5-minute break before we begin with the Senate candidates. It was very, listen. Oh, is yours the black one? Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. I left my phone at home. Thank you so much. Hi. Send it to me.
Good work. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I already went there. You know that. I already went. I'm the guy that already went. Fine.
We again can take questions for Senate candidates because I'm hoping that they don't get the same questions. I don't want them to have time to plan their answers. So if anyone has questions, I have some I did not use from Assembly. And of course, we have the ones that were submitted online.
Did you give them the citizens guides?
Oh, no.
Let me get them. That's all right. No problem. That's what
Are
I'm
they
here
still
for.
here? Thank you. Sorry.
I couldn't quite phrase the. I'll let you decide if you get to my questions.
Yeah.
You know, I was saying it about you. I screwed you up and asked the out all the time. Every day. Thank you so much. It's very hard for people to think. Like you have tie organizers, but they don't sell like shoelace organizers. Yeah, it started there and then progressed. Yeah.
Oh, George runs the TV.
She has a bunch of questions. And if I remember, I'll send you that. I'll send you those. If I remember you heard.
Got it.
Let's face it, you know. You all right? You don't need to do anything. I think you have quite a bit, don't you?
Huh?
You have quite a bit.
Yeah, well, I hope I get more from I took primarily audience questions.
Yeah, and that was good. I think that was right, because they were good. There were some of them.
Yeah.
Sure, but when I. She said, now everybody's ready to do it. So this. Okay, so right, and that's fine. You say you're asking us to something. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, good idea. He didn't, well, Kim wants to say, now you have these index cards, write your question on them. You know, he wants to explain it. And that's
Yep.
fine.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All
Yeah.
right. Is George back? Are we ready?
Yeah, George is back. Do you want that? I don't know. Look at the time. Yeah, please. George is coming. Yeah.
Take my seat up here.
Yes.
Yes, you should.
You can take your mask off and breathe.
Sure. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. I don't know, I haven't tried it yet.
Again, if you have questions for the Senate candidates,
Tell me when now.
write them on the 3x5 cards.
Check, 1, 2, 3. Okay. You good?
Check 1, 2, 3.
Check, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, good evening, and welcome to the Legislative District 16 Candidates Forum, Part 2. We just met with the Assembly candidates, and now we're going to meet with the candidates for Senate. We have Andrew Zwicker and Michael Pappas with us. I'm Barbara Preston. I'm editor of the Montgomery News, one of the few remaining independent newspapers in New Jersey. We're primarily in Montgomery Township, but we also distribute to Hillsborough, Rocky Hill, Princeton, Hopewell, and parts of Franklin. And I wanted to introduce you to a member of the Raritan student body.
I got it. Yeah, I'm Preston Clausen, a member of RVCC's student government. I'm the vice president of info and media. I just want to thank everyone for coming out here today to attend this. You know, further participation is a very important thing, and it's great to see so many people being so involved. I just want you guys to know that we do have these little note cards that you can write your own questions on for us to give to the candidates. So if you need one of those, just raise your hand. One of us can walk over, give you a note card and a pen. And then when you're done writing your question, we can take those note cards and bring them up here. Thanks.
Raritan Valley Community College is hosting us tonight, and we're very thankful for them allowing us to have the forum here. We're also grateful to Princeton Community Television. They are videotaping this event live, and they will also be posting it on their website. Without further ado, I think we should probably just get started in the interest of time. And best of luck to our candidates.
So I'm Sandra Matson. I will be moderating this portion of the forum with candidates for the Senate in the 16th Legislative District. Just a reminder that the League of Women Voters, who is the primary sponsor of this evening, is a nonpartisan political nonprofit. We do take stands on positions, but we never support or oppose candidates for office or political parties. So we will begin just with a quick reminder of the format. Each candidate, again, will have 90 seconds to respond to your questions and those questions submitted online. There's a 30-second rebuttal allowed if they so wish. Again, our timekeeper is in the front row with a yellow and a red card. Yellow means you have 15 seconds remaining. Red, that you should finish your sentence without too many semicolons. We've already heard that it's being live streamed and will be rebroadcast. So the candidates are, to my right for Senate from representing the 16th Legislative District, Republican candidate Michael Pappas, and next to him is the Democratic candidate Andrew Zwicker. And they drew for opening statements. So Mr. Zwicker, 90 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, the Montgomery News, Raritan Valley Community College, and Princeton Community Television for hosting this forum tonight. And thank you to all of you who are here and to those who are watching online. It's especially fitting that we're here having a debate to replace retiring State Senator Kip Bateman at Raritan Valley Community College, a place where his father was instrumental in starting not just this college, but the entire community college system. My name is Andrew Zwicker, and I've had the honor of representing the 16th Legislative District in the New Jersey General Assembly since winning by just 78 votes in 2015, when I became the first Democrat in our district's history, and I'm the first physicist to ever serve in the New Jersey Legislature. I spent my entire professional career working on alternative energy. In the legislature, I'm the chair of the Science Committee, and I'm proud to have sponsored over 200 pieces of legislation that have become law, including more than 24 that I've written, to protect our environment, ensure clean air and water for all, innovative ways to grow our economy, preserve farmland, preserve open space, and ensure that access to voting in New Jersey is easier. Most recently, I've worked with my colleagues in the legislature to combat the economic toll on COVID-19 has left upon our small businesses and our communities, helping them get back on their feet and to thrive. I'm proud to be endorsed by over 24 groups, including nurses and teachers, police and firefighters, labor unions, environmentalists, and so many more.
Time.
Thank you, and I look forward to tonight's debate.
Mr. Pappas.
Thank you. I want to thank the League, the Princeton Community Station, Television, the Montgomery News, and Raritan Valley Community College. I'm particularly pleased to see the students that are here, so important for the future of our state. You know, the people of New Jersey have been struggling for a number of years, and this past year with the onslaught of the pandemic, there has been an untold devastation from individual families who have lost loved ones, individuals whose businesses have been decimated, and the present plan or lack of a plan from the state legislature is one of the reasons why I'm running for the state legislature. 1/3 of all small businesses in our state have closed permanently over the past year. The state's reaction to the pandemic with regard to the business community has been disjointed. Large businesses were able to remain open with limited restrictions. Small businesses were required to close, and again, 1/3 of them have been closed permanently. Legislative oversight is very critical for the state legislative bodies. This present legislature, my opponent in particular, has ignored that very critical role in legislative oversight. If I'm in the state Senate, no matter who the governor is, I will take that constitutional responsibility very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll jump right into questions. The first will go to Mr. Pappas. What are your thoughts about creating K through 12 regional or countywide school districts?
The cost of education, as has been said here earlier, is 2/3 of every property tax bill that is paid is to local school districts. The state of New Jersey and the state legislature, and I believe my opponent, is in support of a measure that would require school districts to merge. New Jersey has a tradition of home rule. I certainly do not support requirements to force or coerce school districts to merge for that matter, for municipalities to merge. It needs to be done on a voluntary basis. And I know in some instances, merging of certain services have been studied to determine whether it's cost effective or not. But freedom and opportunity is important. Education is very critical. I think the costs have gone out of control, and primarily, in my view, because of administrative costs. The costs of duplication of administration of school districts is one of the primary areas of where property taxes are impacted and could be lessened if there were legislators who would tackle that. I do not believe the present legislative majority, and certainly my opponent, who's beholden to the teachers union, would move in that direction.
Mr. Zwicker.
Thank you. New Jersey does have more school districts than it has municipalities. And there is a cost, as my opponent just said, that is directly related to property taxes. And so there we're in agreement. Where we diverge is I do not believe that we should be forcing school districts to merge. What we should be doing is incentivizing, and doing so with always the eyes of the student, and ensuring that we do so in a way that puts education in our children first. There's no doubt that there are efficiencies to be found, but to do so is going to take a concerted effort by stakeholders across the educational spectrum, from students and parents to administrators and teachers and support staff. That's not an easy thing to do, but it is certainly something that we need to be looking at as a state. Thank you.
Edwin, with an additional 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'd just like to elaborate on that. I've served as a local official. I've served at the county level, certainly federally. Property taxes continue to be a real problem in New Jersey. As I go around this district, affordability is the #1 issue on people's minds. Many people talk about their exit strategy, and the cost of property taxes is first and foremost, along with the state income taxes. Again, school districts should be permitted to consider regionalization, but the coercion that I think is represented in this legislation is not the way to go.
Time.
No.
No. All right, the next question goes to Mr. Zwicker. Due to a need to decarbonize the energy sector, do you support New Jersey investing in small modular reactors, in other words, nuclear technology? It goes on to say states like Wyoming have begun this investment, and it would fit in with New Jersey's green energy record to do the same. So it's, what is your position on small modular reactors, nuclear technology, when we're talking about energy policy?
I suspect that there's a physicist in the audience who asked that question. The question is really about how do we decarbonize? What is the role of nuclear energy? What is the role of solar and of wind? And perhaps one day, what is the role of fusion energy? So small nuclear reactors are a type of fission energy that have less radioactive fuel, but they also have their own problems. But there is no doubt that nuclear fission is a bridge to a fully 100% renewable solar and wind energy future. New Jersey is approximately 40% powered by nuclear, and that's how we are keeping our carbon levels as low as they are. There's more to be done. New Jersey is aggressively becoming a leader when it comes to offshore wind, and is ready to put forth 7,500 megawatts over the next decade. New Jersey is also aggressively moving to build out solar. And so it is this portfolio, it is this combination of energy that is going to allow us to continue to be a leader when it comes to how we can decarbonize and show the rest of the country and the rest of the world how we can move to a carbon-free energy.
Mr. Pappas.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Small nuclear reactors.
Yeah, I'm picking up the, yes, I thought, well, it was happenstance that it first went to Mr. Zwicker. So essentially the question is saying, with our need to decarbonize, should this particular nuclear technology be part of what we're looking at in order to accomplish that?
Energy production is probably one of the more critical issues facing this generation and future generations, as well as potable water. Options, allowing the free market to invest, to provide users of energy, consumers of energy, greater options is very critical. There are programs that have taken place that provide financial incentives for individual property owners to utilize more energy efficient devices, and that is something certainly I support. What I do express concern about is the cost, the financial cost on ratepayers and users and consumers of energy if the present path continues without any analysis. I believe solar energy is very critically important, and many people want to take advantage of that. Wind energy, or energy produced from large windmills, is very critical. But there are environmental concerns, such as what's recently occurred in Northern Europe, where the huge windmills are not turning because the North Sea winds have died down. And what has been the reaction of that is that coal and natural gas generation facilities have had to be powered up, and costs of energy have skyrocketed. That's a concern.
30 seconds?
Sure. I do agree that we need to do a careful analysis of whatever type of energy source we're going to build out and put forth. We also have to make sure that that cost analysis, while being very careful that it does not have a negative impact on small businesses and people, takes into the fact that if we do nothing, the cost will be even more. And that's got to be a part of what we're considering.
I'm good. The next question will sound familiar, but I am going to use it a second time. First to Mr. Pappas. Part of the American Rescue Plan, which saw a little over $6 billion come to New Jersey state government. There's $4 billion of it remaining still to be allocated. How do you think that money should be spent or allocated to be spent?
Part of the discussion has to be what the legislature has traditionally done, especially over the last few years, and Mr. Zwicker in particular, what his stance has been on fiscal matters. He has voted on several occasions to raise state income taxes. He has voted to raise property taxes. He has voted to institute a rain tax. He has supported what's the highest corporate tax rate in the nation. And he supported the $9.9 billion debt. Affordability. So when you get $4 billion from the federal government, what do you do with it? Well, you try to impact property taxes. Mr. Lukac and Mr. Panico spoke of body cameras, unfunded mandate. Great thing. I support it totally. But one town in particular has over $500,000 startup cost with a $190,000 grant, plus the residual costs. It's a great cause, but if Mr. Zwicker and the majority in the legislature felt it was so important, they should have fully funded it. That's a direct cost of property taxes. Lastly, and I don't have a lot of time, which hopefully we'll get to later, is the infrastructure impact that municipalities have experienced because of Hurricane Ida. Those funds should be used to help local governments offset property tax increases or additional debt that they would have to incur to cover those costs.
Time. Mr. Zwicker.
Thank you. I'm going to try to actually answer the question. There's a couple of places we need to do. Number one, we have a significant infrastructure problem in this state. We are a state that commutes to our jobs more often than not. We're a state that is in our cars, our roads and our bridges are in bad shape. This is exactly the type of money and funding that we need to improve our infrastructure. We also have to improve our computer infrastructure. We've seen over the last 18 months how our lives are now so much online. And so ensuring that we get high-speed internet to our rural communities and into our urban cities is going to be key, because that's how you thrive. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're getting this money into people who were really hurting over the last 18 months and getting them back on their feet, individually, their businesses, their homes. This is how we need to spend this money. And that's what we're going to do over the next couple of years.
Do I have 30 seconds?
Yes, you always have 30 seconds if you wish.
Thank you. It's priorities, it's perspective. $4 billion is a lot of money for anyone, even for the people of New Jersey. I talked about the tax increases, the property taxes increases. The state legislature, Andrew Zwicker was a part of instituting raising property taxes for a very, very worthy cause. If you feel body cameras are important, then you should have funded them fully for your municipalities and every municipality in the state.
The next question goes first to Mr. Zwicker. The question is, why do you think that community colleges have increased tuition and made it less affordable for people trying to seek higher education? I'm going to tweak that slightly and say, what should the legislature be doing to try to turn that around, increased tuition, specifically talking about community colleges?
Okay. And it's a wonderful question to answer here in Raritan Valley Community College. The cost of providing a high quality education, like happens here and happens throughout our community college system, is from a function of different things. And we need to make sure that we are approaching that right, which means how do we put the money in, which is the state's obligation, to cover the fair share of costs. We talk a lot about a K through 12 school funding formula and changes there. We've talked less about the fact that it's beholden upon the state to put in their share of the cost for our community colleges and our public four-year universities. So the first thing we want to do as legislators is ensure that the state is putting those funds in. Then the rest of this is going to be to ensure that each of our community colleges is working as efficiently as possible. And I know this is one where in particular, they've kept costs down because of that ability.
For many years, I was a member of the Somerset County Board of Freeholders, serving along with Kip Bateman, and I was proud to support many of the expansions of the facilities on this very campus. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen? Those increased in services available to the students of Somerset and Hunterdon counties were primarily paid for on the backs of the property taxpayers of Somerset and Hunterdon counties. Traditionally, the state of New Jersey has not fully funded community colleges. And if Mr. Zwicker feels that support of community colleges is important, as I certainly do, then he should have advocated and should advocate, as I will advocate, for fully funding the state's share of community colleges. That has not been done traditionally for years. Property taxpayers of these communities have paid for the beautiful facilities and the exceptional staff, not the state legislature. And so Mr. Panico spoke of funding for the school districts, and you voted the same as Mr. Fryman. But what about community colleges? People in this state need community colleges that are thriving and expanding. We have that here, but not because of the legislature, because of the taxpayers and the Board of Freeholders of Somerset County and Hunterdon County, and people like Gray Bateman. And if I go to Trenton, I will support fully funding for community colleges.
This question will go to Mr. Pappas. New Jersey had more nursing home deaths per capita than any other state in the nation. Would you support an independent investigation into the nursing home policies if elected to the Senate?
Absolutely. This is another example of legislative oversight that Andrew Zwicker has not undertaken. When COVID-19 hit, my 95-year-old mother was in a nursing home. Thank goodness she didn't contract COVID-19. But Phil Murphy was on the television every day, because I watch his press conferences every day, and he talked about what the state was doing. Now, at the beginning, I think he and every other governor did the right thing by shutting things down. But one of the things that Phil Murphy did and Andrew Zwicker supported through his silence was requiring nursing homes, like where my mother lived, and veterans homes to be required to take COVID-19 patients. Now, I want COVID-19 patients to be cared for. I have a 57-year-old friend who passed away in March of last year. My wife had a 54-year-old coworker who passed away. It hit home for us very closely. But for the governor and the legislature to tout how people were being discharged from hospitals, but never saying where were they being discharged to. And people like my mother, Artemis Pappas, 95 years old, was being put at risk because they were required to take these folks. Now, people should have been cared for. I support that. I don't want anyone to think that I don't want people to be cared for, but Phil Murphy is being investigated by the Department of Justice under a Biden administration because of these questionable practices.
Time. Mr. Zwicker, the issue of independent investigation on the nursing home deaths.
So my mom was also in a nursing home the same time yours was. And fortunately, she did not pass away from COVID-19. But I was there every week, multiple times a day, multiple times a week, caring for her, watching the staff of that nursing home care for her and care for every other resident that was there. It was heartbreaking times. The governor had to make some very, very difficult decisions at a time when it was difficult to even know how this virus spread. I was terribly scared for my own mother. I was also unbelievably thankful for the support of the nurses and the caregivers and the doctors and the administrators of her nursing home, just like every other nursing home in this state. Do we need to look backwards and see what we could do better before the next health crisis happens? Yes, we do. We absolutely do. But we also have to be thankful for every single care provider and every single nursing home throughout our state who had to do just a tremendous job during the most difficult circumstances.
My mother
30 seconds.
My mother received great care, and I have great respect and admiration and affection and appreciation for those folks and people like them. But again, I had opportunities to speak to people in the governor's office. I was on daily calls with municipal officials and county officials, state officials, and would ask people from the governor's office to offer explanations, ask questions such as comments in my comments a moment ago. Never any responses. Some legislative offices were represented, not always all of them. Legislative oversight, again, you didn't do it.
The next question goes first to Mr. Zwicker. What should be our environmental priorities to protect the state of New Jersey, its businesses and its families with the changes in climate and all that is causing? So what are your environmental priorities?
So It's a bunch of different things that all have to occur at once. First of all, as we talked about in a previous question, we want to reduce New Jersey's consumption of fossil fuels to help decarbonize, do our share to decarbonize the air. We know that this is a national and global problem, but New Jersey can and is becoming a leader. We also have to start to work very hard on making our existing buildings more energy efficient. About 40% of the energy that we consume in New Jersey right now is in our warehouses and our larger structures. And we can save tremendous amount of energy by putting forth programs to help building owners make their HVAC systems and their lighting systems and their insulation systems more energy efficient. It's the lowest hanging fruit. And then we have to electrify. We have to electrify our transportation system, our cars, our light trucks, our buses, and we have to do so in a way to make sure that people have the ability to charge their cars up because we are moving to an electric transportation system. To do this is lots of different moving parts, but they all have to occur together so that we can rapidly meet our energy goals.
Mr. Pappas.
Could you repeat the question again, please? Make sure I.
Yes, and I did a little editing, so I apologize. What are your environmental priorities to protect the state of New Jersey, its businesses and families that live here, in light of changing climate and all the issues we're seeing related to that? So your environmental priorities.
When I first served in local government, the environment was the reason I got involved. There was massive development being proposed, and I opposed it because it destroyed environmentally sensitive areas and our agricultural areas. Continued that as a member of the county governing body, supporting farmland preservation programs that literally preserved hundreds, if not thousands, of farmland in Somerset County. As a state legislator, we have the opportunity to enact laws or propose things, set priorities fiscally, and what you've done, Mr. Zwicker, really falls short. Talking about diversifying of energy consumption options for people is very, very critical, but I also think that understanding the economic cost, the environment is, there's an economic environment as well as the environment in the purest sense of the words. And again, cost of energy consumption. I'm not going to repeat what I said about Northern Europe, but in this part of the state, most of us have JCP&L as electric provider. And around here, a lot of people are getting gas generators for their homes because a storm with trees that we have here will knock out their energy, their electricity to their homes. And I think there's a practical side for how these kinds of things will impact people. There cannot be, in my mind today, quickly a shift to reliance upon energy because of other considerations that hopefully I can elaborate on later.
Can I?
Yes, 30 seconds.
While I certainly expected you to criticize me on a variety of different topics, I didn't expect to be criticized on the environment. I am, year after year, tied for the highest rated environmental legislator in either house. I have written and sponsored more than 25 bills when it comes to protecting our environment.
Please hold your applause. Mr. Pappas, do you wish to respond to him?
I admire anyone who says that they are supportive of protecting the environment, but again, there are measures that what has been accomplished. I can point to communities that have environmentally sensitive areas that have been preserved, partially on my watch. I can point to programs that have preserved land through support of taxpayers on my watch. And I haven't just talked about things in theory. I've gotten things done.
The next question will go first to Mr. Zwicker. It was one that was submitted online. Before the pandemic, in January of 2020, legislation to remove the religious exemption from getting vaccinated for school children failed to pass in the New Jersey Senate. Should this or similar legislation be reconsidered?
Thank you. Even as the questioner asked, even before the pandemic, vaccines and vaccinations were a topic on many people's minds. I've met with countless families, parents who have been concerned about their children, about the safety of vaccines. And we've talked about this because I fully understand that the one thing a parent wants to do is protect their children. That's what I want to do. I'm sure that's what you want to do. We also have to follow the science, and we have to have the science guide us in making these sort of decisions. And vaccines have been shown to be safe. Does that mean that adverse things don't happen? No, of course not. But vaccines save lives. And so we have to do everything we can to save lives. And I am a sponsor of the legislation that was in, that you're referencing, to say that the one exemption we will allow is for a physician and a family member to say that there's a medical reason not to have a vaccine. But the legislation would remove a religious exemption.
Mr. Pappas?
I would vote as Kip Bateman would vote, which is not how he would vote. Religious traditions in our country are sacred, and I believe that those kinds of provisions need to be maintained. The vaccine is important for many people. I advocate people to be vaccinated if they believe it does not go against their religious convictions, or if there's a medical condition. I have a family member who is allergic to the components of all of the present vaccines that are available. This individual has been advised by their physician not to take the vaccine. So what would they do? I know I'm going a little bit beyond the question, but it's relevant to this topic. There are people who categorize people, vaccinated and the unvaccinated, as two groups. You know who said that? Andrew Zwicker said it. He said, we have two groups in New Jersey, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. We have one group of people in New Jersey. There was a rally in Trenton where there were thousands of parents there to oppose a vaccine, or excuse me, a mask requirement. He was caught on tape, looking at the crowd, making a gesture, a dismissive gesture, while these people were there. That's not what Mike Pappas would do.
Please. Do you want?
Sure, thank you. Thousands of New Jerseyans have died from COVID-19, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans in this country, and millions around the world. We have got to do what is right for each other. We have to take care of each other, and we have to stop politicizing masks and stop politicizing vaccines.
Mr. Pappas. Now more than ever, it's important to ensure young voters are educated and get involved in governmental process. What can we do to promote youth engagement in government and politics?
Well, I started in my early 20s, and I did so because I was interested, but I did so because there were many adults that encouraged me to get involved. So I have made it part and parcel of what I do is to encourage younger people to be involved in every way possible, whether it's involving them in community efforts, in political campaigns, members of my staff. Many people did a lot for me, and I have always continued to do that and will continue to do that. I've also been involved as a youth volunteer through the 4-H program. Been fortunate to engage with thousands of young people for 25, 30 years, and will continue to do so because they are our future. I think it's critically important to be available, to recognize that they are our future, and to involve them in every way possible.
Mr. Zwicker?
I entered the legislature, my desire to run for public office was driven by two things. One was climate change and the crisis that is in front of us, and the other was civic engagement and getting young people involved in our local government and in our civic process. The first bill that I ever wrote is called the New Voter Empowerment Act, which allows 17-year-olds to vote in a primary election if they're 18 by the time of the general election. Because once a voter, always a voter. It's that important to get people engaged. I have been fortunate to be with a staff of young people, of young students who have helped in all sorts of facets of what we do in the legislature. What I've seen in the last few years is such a sense of optimism as young people, as some in the audience right now, have gotten involved in our local government because they know that they can and will make a difference. And they are making a difference. When young people gather by the millions to say that we will not accept anything but changes in how we are impacting our climate, then people are listening. I've seen young people again say, we will not accept the social conditions, the racial conditions in this country. And again, they're making a difference. So I am very optimistic by what I see from young people.
If I may?
Yes.
Talked about some of what I did, and I'm going to emphasize his dismissive gesture to thousands of people, families, young people. Attitude was not one of a leader who claims to be supportive of encouraging people to be involved, and there were a lot of young families there. I want to mention one other thing, that the young people that of this age group, maybe a little bit older, Vinny spoke of it, the economic struggle that they are encountering in New Jersey because of lack of affordability. Things have to change, costs have to be reduced, and he will continue to support policies that drive people like them out of the state.
Final question before close. You'll go first to Mr. Zwicker, similar to what was asked of the Assembly candidates, but from the audience. What are your legislative priorities if elected?
My legislative priorities, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to the state Senate, are the same legislative priorities that I've had in the General Assembly. And there are three places. One, that we didn't get a chance to talk about tonight, is how can we use technology and innovation to grow jobs? The innovation economy that it's often called. How can we ensure that ideas that come out of our universities, our community colleges, or someone's garage can grow into the next business that thrives here in New Jersey? Second, which has come up, is climate change. And what are the policies we need to put forth to ensure that we protect clean air, clean water, and open land for New Jerseyans? And third is access to voting. While other states have been making it harder and harder for people to vote, I am proud to be one of the legislative leaders when it comes to early voting, when it comes to making sure that our vote by mail ballots are all counted, to ensure that our elections are safe and that they're available to all. If I'm so fortunate to win this election, that's what I'll continue to do in the New Jersey State Senate.
Mr. Pappas.
I think affordability is the #1 issue in the minds of the people that I've talked to, thousands of people that I've talked to since entering this race. I talk of unfunded mandates. Body cameras is one example, but it's a philosophical approach. Are you going to advocate for things and require local governments to provide the service without the funding? Then you're voting to increase property taxes. It is that simple, and you have done it time and time again. I understand local government. I've not been on a school board. I understand how it operates. I understand the funding mechanism. I will not ever vote for an unfunded mandate, no matter what the program. If I feel something is important enough, then I should have the guts to advocate for funding it. It's as simple as that. And I think that property tax, income tax, increases such as those that you have advocated for and supported will not be what Mike Pappas will do. I will tell you that. Government, legislative oversight is another area I've spoken about here. No matter who governor, I believe Jack Ciattarelli will be the governor. No matter who the governor is, I will take legislative oversight as one of my primary constitutionally mandated requirements. I will seek membership of the Legislative Oversight Committee and the State Senate, because if people in the state legislature do not hold the executive branch accountable, then we will continue to be frustrated moving forward.
Thank you. Time for closing remarks and 90 seconds each. Mr. Pappas.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest. And for those who are not with us here today, hope that you will take away some of the contrast between myself and Andrew Zwicker. I do believe there is a very clear contrast between the two of us. I believe I have a very deep and thorough understanding of the property tax challenges and the struggles of the small businesses. I was fortunate to serve the United States Small Business Administration. And just a moment, comment about that. I served there right after 9/11. Devastation that I saw in small businesses, not just in New York City, but even in New Jersey, was devastating. The parallels for me are very clear between the devastation to our small business sector then and the devastation to the small business sector today. As was said a number of times, 1/3 of all small businesses have closed their doors permanently. I will make support for programs and a budget that would be supportive of the opportunity that small business owners are looking for. Priority, one of my major priorities that has not been Andrew Zwicker's focus. He has talked about some very worthy goals. He's a physicist, he's a brilliant scientist, and I admire him for his service in that realm, but there's no practicality in what the people of New Jersey are suffering with today. And I believe I understand what needs to be done today. Thank you.
Mr. Zwicker.
Thank you. Thank you for moderating. Thank you to the Montgomery News, Princeton Community Television, Raritan Valley Community College for this evening, and for all those who are watching at home, or for those of you who are here tonight. In 2015, I won my first election to the Assembly by 78 votes, underscoring the importance of never taking anyone's support for granted. Every vote must be earned. Over the last 6 years, I've worked to earn your vote each election, and now I'm asking for your support to represent you in the state Senate. As a scientist in government, all of my decision-making is rooted in fact and evidence of an issue. It does not forget the fundamental fact that policy affects people. That's why I not only champion issues of science and technology or economic issues of job creation and innovation, but also women's healthcare and healthcare access more broadly, expansion of voting rights and access, and equality within all of our communities. We are emerging from what has been one of the hardest 18-month stretches in most of our lives, and we have a massive opportunity in front of us. We've been shown structural faults within our society, and as an elected official, and those of us who are hoping to continue, we have a responsibility to address them. I am proud of the work that I've done in the Assembly over the last 6 years. There is so much more to be done. I hope that my record has earned your support, and I hope to become the next senator of the 16th Legislative District. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you for your participation, and I did not do this before. It's something I traditionally do. There were a lot of questions here I did not get to, and I apologize, and I like to just tell people and the candidates some of the other questions that were out there. One about, we often hear about the budget. What can you cut from the budget? How should we handle our pension system? Question about voting rights. Question about overdevelopment and flooding and how that all ties in with actions that the legislature or elected officials should be taken. Question about women's choice, pro-choice, and a question about who you believe should be taxed to support the kind of government we we seem to want or we seem to need. So again, you've heard about the sponsors. I want to thank all of them again, and remind you, in case you weren't here for the previous forum, that you have 3 ways to vote. You can request a vote by mail ballot from your county clerk, and then you return that voted ballot either by mail or in a drop box or by delivering it to your Board of Elections office. There's early voting for the first time this year. It begins on Saturday, October 23rd through Sunday, October 31st. And again, that's voting on machines, which for many of us will be new machines. And if you're not voting by mail or voting early, obviously we expect you to vote on Election Day, November 2nd, at your polling place between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. So check your county clerk or Board of Election websites to find out all the details about where drop boxes are, and make sure, look at your sample ballot to make sure your precinct hasn't changed if you're voting on Election Day. Or you can go to vote.nj.gov and find all that information, since it's all the sites are county-based. So thank you again very much for your attention and your questions, and the candidates for responding to the policy issues that you asked them to address. And good night. Oh, I have to give our youth to.